This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 296, Mind Hacking Sales, an interview with Sean Webb.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. Before I get started, I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Our guest today is going to be Sean Webb. He's a specialist in emotional intelligence, artificial emotional intelligence, and the algorithms of human emotion. In this episode, Sean and I are going to talk about his new book, Mind Hacking Happiness, The Quickest Way to Happiness and Controlling Your Mind. Throughout our chat, the conversation is going to keep returning to his new idea, Mind Hacking Sales, because it's critical for sales professionals to understand how the mind works, both yours and your customers. Once you understand the emotional buttons and levers of the human mind, you can grow your persuasion skills and build solid selling relationships. So, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Sean. Are you ready to babble?
I am.
Awesome. You're an author of a new book called Mind Hacking Happiness, The Quickest Way to Happiness and Controlling Your Mind. And I just really noticed this on the book. This is volume 1, so it sounds like you're going to do more of these.
I am. And in fact, this conversation is prompting me to put out volume 3 as Mind Hacking Sales. So we'll dive a little deeper into the intricacies of sales and whatnot, because the science that we're going to talk about today, I'm super excited about this interview over all the others that I've done. And I'll tell you why, for 2 reasons. One, before I became an author that was like talking about the mind and whatnot, and understand, the book has had some amazing, like, cool success in that, we've had some really cool success stories of people changing their lives, et cetera. And I'm getting invited to all these cool science conferences to talk about the science that we're going to talk about. And some Navy SEALs have even stepped up to say, this is the best mind training manual on the planet. And I'm just like floored by the endorsements that have come out of this. I've come up in my previous life as a sales guy. And I think the best application of this science, believe it or not, is going to be in the world of sales professionals and serving their customers. Because if you understand your human mind, you can get by your own limitations. And then if you understand the human minds of your customers, then you can get to more sales. It is so cool. I'm so excited.
Yeah, which is exactly why I wanted to have you on here, because I totally agree with you. Sales is a mentally challenging business. That's why a lot of people avoid it.
Yeah.
Or a lot of people get into it and then immediately get out of it, right? They just like that. So I thought anything we can do to have that you can maybe give these people some help, that would be much appreciated.
I'm up for it.
All right. First thing that I saw in the book that you bring up is that you create your own bullshit.
Yeah.
That's what you say.
Yeah.
And you're not the first on this podcast to say something to this, like this. You hear it all the time. But when I was reading it, I want to take a different point of view. How do you know this is true? Because is that really true? I didn't create my quota, right? I don't have the commission structure. I don't have any control over these prospects not calling me back, returning my phone calls. It's them got the issue, right? If they just did what they should be doing, if they were more mindful about what's going on here, I wouldn't have these problems. They're creating the bullshit, aren't they?
Kind of, but no. You complete the final step of that process in that if they put unrealistic goals in front of you, you're the person who stresses out about them enough that your prefrontal cortex starts to shut off, and then you can't figure out a way out of the mess that these people have put you in, right? Or when your frustration arises that your customers won't call you back and it's inhibiting your ability to be your true self and to be your happy self that is going to get those guys to open up and actually push whatever project that you're working on and closing forward, that's on you, right? That, we're talking about all of the struggles that inhibit your ability to get your work done and to be an amazing individual and have an epic life, period. all come from your mind. When you get angry, the last step in that process is your mind becoming angry because of whatever instances or whatever situations that are occurring around you that you've judged that create your anger. When you become sad or disappointed in something, the last step in the process is that your mind creates that sadness. Or when you become fearful about something and you start panicking that a sale is going to fall through at the last second and you do something wrong, the last step in that process is that your mind has created the fear that has stood in your way and created a stumbling block for you to be able to attain your goals. And so that's what I mean when I say you create all your own bullshit. It's completely true from a process perspective, because the last step in the process of every inhibiting emotional reaction you have is going to be that your mind creates that reaction.
Could you say that again? Your mind create.
Yeah, your mind creates that reaction that you're having. And so if you can take control of your mind and stop that process, then you can stop that inhibiting reaction from happening.
Yeah. You hear this a lot. Oh, right. Like, this is what some monk in Nepal would say, right? If I just don't care about it so much, if I don't care about that suffering, it'll just go away, right? It'll just go away. But that's easier said than done.
It is, until you actually learn the process of how your mind works and you learn the levers that you can pull and the buttons that you can push and the knobs that you can turn to get a different reaction from your mind. Your brain is a function. It's a portion of your nervous system, right? And your nervous system works on two simple variables that, by the way, you can control. And so if you can control those variables after you learn what they are and you start to affect them in a way, then that changes the operation of your nervous system and your brain en masse. I mean, it just does. That's the basic physiology of how your body works. And so when you adjust those variables, your mind gives you a different reaction to the things going on around you. And if you can adjust those variables in a way that it gives you a more positive reaction or a less negative reaction, then you can take control of your situation and do more with what you've got.
Okay, so what are those two variables?
Okay, so the two variables that you're always looking at, or that your mind is always looking at, because a lot of your reactions come from your subconscious mind, but this is the way it works. Your limbic system is always looking around you for potential threats, right? It is, and this goes back to simple survival. Your brain is your organ of survival. And so your limbic system is always scanning every one of your senses for potential threats. It's looking down at the ground and saying, is that a hose or is that a snake, right? But it's also looking at headlines. It's also looking at sales projections. It's also looking at forecasts. It's also looking at your funnel. It's also looking at all the things that you're analyzing from a day-to-day basis and putting an appraisal of whether those things are good or bad on, in your mind. Now, the second thing that comes in, and the first part's called perception, by the way. That's just how you're looking at things, how you're seeing things, the things that are coming in from your world around you, et cetera. The second thing that your mind looks at is your sense of self, because the limbic system has to say, okay, I'm looking around for threats. Well, a second question has to be asked. A threat to what? And so your mind then has to create this laundry list of a definition of this is me and this is not me, right? And so that starts with your body from a physiological perspective. Like, that's why you duck when a baseball comes flying at your head. It's been forever since I've been to a Cubs game. I know you're up near Chicago.
Yep.
That's one of the things that, the limbic system does, and it hijacks your thinking brain and hijacks your body. And it's what allows you to duck out of the way of the ball involuntarily when it comes flying at your head. But these things also then get more complicated over time. There's this guy, Jim Cohn at UVA, who proved that your sense of self is not just your body. It also maps to the people that you care about and the people around you. And what he did was he brought somebody into an fMRI and he said, okay, we're going to give you a flash of light in your eyes, and then we're going to watch your brain, and then we're going to zap your ankle. And when they gave the flash of light, the brain lit up like they expected it to, which was the fear center of the brain says, oh my God, I'm going to get zapped. And so it, basically is what happened. Now, what they did next is they brought a stranger in and they said, okay, I'm going to take this ankle zapper off of you and put it on the stranger. And then we're going to give you the flash of light, and then we're going to zap the stranger. And the same exact thing that they expected also happened on the fMRI. When they gave them the flash of light, their brain did not light up in fear because they weren't going to get zapped. And, might have giggled a little bit because the stranger is going to get zapped. Who knows? I'd have sold cable rights and had some popcorn. But basically they saw what they expected, which was nobody feared the stranger getting zapped because there was no threat to self. There was no threat to your body. But then they brought a familiar in, like a significant other or a dear friend or a child or somebody that the person knew, and they put the ankle zapper on that friend. That familiar is what science calls it. And the brain scans could not be discerned from the first time when their body itself was going to be zapped when they gave them the flash of light. So when somebody that they cared about was on the next stretcher about to be zapped, they freaked out again because the sense of self wrote people into the laundry list of things that must be defended against threats. And so then Tiffany Burnett White showed that we also make brand connections, which is why we love sports teams, right? We make a connection to the Chicago Cubs, for instance, and they become a portion of our sense of self. And so when we see that score, either positive or negative in the newspaper, we have a positive or negative reaction associated with that score because of what that team means to us. That's our definition of self. And we also connect to politics and religion. Sam Harris did some science on that kind of stuff. But all the things in your life become a portion of your self map, including the things that you've attached to, like, I always make quota, or I really need to make quota this quarter, or I really need to make this sale, or I would really love for this spreadsheet to look like XYZ or whatever it is. And then when you have a perception that comes in on the other side of that, because you've made that attachment of self on your, in your mind, on your mind map. Well, when you have a perception that comes in after that, that's either good or bad about whatever that thing is that you've attached to, that creates the positive or negative emotion associated with that one thing. And when you can understand that, just that simple process right there, two awesome, amazing things happen. One is that you're given a little bit of a distance between you and the reaction that you're having so that you can actually see it. And just like a tooth can't bite itself, or a olfactory nerve can't smell itself, or an eyeball can't see itself without some distance in a mirror, there has to be some distance between a perceiver and a perceived. And so if you're able to now see your mind and understand why your emotional reactions are happening, your subconscious mind then starts to get the idea, oh, wait a second. If I can see that happening, if I can see that negative emotion happening, if I can see that negative reaction happening, I'm not that reaction. There's a little bit of distance between us, wherever we are, the observer, and this reaction that's occurring. And so that removes you from the effect a little bit. But the second cool thing that happened was discovered by Matt Lieberman at UCLA in 2007, which is basically called the Name It, Tame It study now. And all the copycat studies that were done across the world confirmed this. And they're all called the Name It, Tame It studies. And basically what he did is he brought people into an fMRI and he said, okay, we're going to give you this set of images that show you certain emotional reactions occurring in individuals. And they're going to evoke an emotional response within you. And they watched the brain when they showed them these images. They're all like standard psychological images. And the brain did exactly what it was supposed to do. It mimicked the fear response. And, this was all science connected with mirror neurons and empathy circuits and things like that to be able to identify with whatever you're seeing. And then through the second group, he said, okay, here's what I want to do. I want you to name the emotion in play. And that's it. Just name it. And what happened in the second group was that immediately upon putting an understanding cognitive process to the emotional process that the limbic system was sending up to the forebrain, the limbic system and the negative emotional reaction turned off in real time. They saw it on the fMRI live as it occurred. And so when you put an understanding to why your frustration is arising by understanding how your mind works, or understanding why your fear or your sadness or disappointment or whatever it is that's arising in your mind, that physiologically shuts off that signal being sent from your emotional center of the brain. It's like a sneeze. You can't even stop it from happening. And that gets that reaction out of your way so that you can then move on with being productive and getting whatever you need to have done to attain your goals. It's amazing. It's like the Name It, Tame It reaction on steroids when you're able to take a look at your mind, understand the components that came together to create your reaction and then gets it out of the way. It's really cool stuff.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I want to jump to a sales thing to keep on the sales, but I can't. I gotta pull out. This is what people have been teaching about mindfulness for centuries.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just that science is now better informing us of how it works, because that's all meditation, right? Meditation is just sitting there observing your breath, trying to count your breaths, or observing something, and then watching your mind try to distract you with, oh, what am I going to have lunch tomorrow, or oh, I need to do this before the end of the day today, or get this report out, or make this sales call, or whatever it is. It's like that's what meditation is all about. It's just like this meta awareness of watching your brain trying to do what it does normally. Well, this is just another way to get into meta awareness,
which I'm a fan of. There's some apps that I use in order to do this, but I also want to put in the context of, and everybody's heard this, me talk about this before on the podcast. Is I'm reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations,
right?
And what that is diarying, writing down what's going on in your mind at this time and trying to understand it. So taking that observer's point of view, just like what you said, what is this is what you said, right? What is the emotion you're experiencing right now, and how that changes your view of the event as it's happening.
Yeah, and that does two awesome, amazing things from a scientific perspective as well. First, it gets you looking at your mind, right? Like what we talked about just a minute ago, and giving you a space of distance between your reaction and what's going on. But then second, it's basically like your nervous system is a big communications network, right? It's just sending messages back and forth all over the place. But one of the things that it loves to do, and this is why the name Attainment Science works, period, is that when it sends a message, it loves to get a message back saying, okay, message received, and I understand what you're saying, and we're taking action about it. Because if it doesn't get that message, it keeps sending it forward. And this is what unresolved emotion is all about. It's like, if you don't resolve an emotion, it will keep, sending a message to you subconsciously forever. And this is how stress builds up in the body and yada, yada, yada. At the point that you say, okay, I got the message and it's received, we're good. Like, when the fear response it starts to send forward to the forebrain to say, is that a snake or is that a hose? And you look down and you see that it's a hose. You send that message back to the emotion center and say, okay, no, we're cool. We got it. Well, the fear stops. Well, that's a physiological response. And so what you're doing when you're writing in your journal, or when you're writing things down that you're feeling or experiencing or whatever, that's like saying, hey, I hear you, emotional brain. Let's clear out the trash cans of the mind and empty out all the things that you've been thinking about, so that you can clear your conscious of these things. So you can clear the queue of the things that you want heard, subconscious mind, and let's get on with whatever's next, right? And so that's basically what you're doing from a scientific perspective.
Okay.
It's super cool stuff.
Okay. So let's do an example. Okay. Let's say it's end of the month.
Yeah.
Right. And
sure.
I'm at 60% of my quota. I've got.
Wow. Sucks to be you.
I've got 48 more hours. What can a salesperson do to turn this around? Or I'm not sure exactly how I want to ask this question. First, I want them to turn it around, or maybe how to just accept this, or what?
No, all right. So first of all,
you're the sensei here, Sean.
Okay, great. Let's hope I can live up to it. Okay, so first of all, when you're managing your own mind, it's more of a constant process. So hopefully you won't get to the end of the month and be in that 60% bucket, because if you understand the minds of your customers, you're going to be able to identify what's a real objection versus a false objection. What are things that you need to do that maybe you didn't think about previously, based on putting yourselves in their perspective and being able to identify the things that their nervous system is going to need to be able to give you a yes at the point that you're trying to close the sale before the end of the month, type of thing. Okay. So being able to understand their basic nervous system, that runs their whole show, that runs their mind. So if you understand the two variables in their minds, that creates their reaction to everything, including all the stuff that you're giving them and trying to, get them the information to make the sale. That is just invaluable to be able to look inside the minds of your customers and understand what they're going to need to make a yes from a nervous system perspective. Like, you can almost hack people to a certain extent to get them to where you want them, which is amazing, amazing stuff. As long as you're, delivering a value to them and not selling them something they don't need or whatever, which isn't really going to work long term.
Like how?
Well, like how do you look into their minds? Or
You said that you could actually hack their perception.
Oh, sure. Yeah, if you look into their perception and you look into their sense of self, and now their sense of self, understand, is very complex. It's more than just their body. It's the project that they're working on, or it's the functional need that they have, something that your product can serve, right? They are attached to a certain need that they're going to have, which includes all of the subsets of the requirements of, service that they're going to need for whatever it is that you guys are talking about. They're going to have all those things ticked off. If you can identify what's on their self map associated with this project or product, then you're going to be able to identify the things that you need to say to them to point out the fact that this serves all of your needs, even if you didn't think about, like, you might be able to map it out better than they have. And you might be able to say, oh, and by the way, this is also going to serve the XYZ functionality, or this is going to help you do this or that or whatever, and get them on board with identifying the things that they've attached to that they didn't even understand that they had attached to, right? So being able to look inside another person's mind to identify what's on their self map is going to be amazing for you as a salesperson, because then it's going to direct exactly what things you need to say or what information you need to get in front of them to create the perceptions, the other side of their equation of emotion, which then creates a positive emotion for them, because no one is going to buy from you unless they're getting a positive emotional response from their emotional center, from their brain. It's weird thing to say, like it's not all lovey-dovey thing, but basically, scientifically speaking, it's an emotional reaction when somebody says, yes, this meets all of our requirements. Yes, this meets all of our satisfaction. Yes, it's cheap enough, or yes, it's within budget, or whatever it is. Like when you check off all the boxes that are required in their mind, there's a positive emotional reaction that comes right before they say, yes, we're going to do this deal. So you need to understand what's going on in their mind. And if you can basically understand what they've attached to and then create the perceptions on the other side of the fence that meet all of their expectations or preferences connected with their self-map item of whatever this project is, you're basically hacking their mind to say, give me that positive emotional response that'll give me that yes. You're serving them while doing it, but you're basically hacking their nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds super weird.
No, it doesn't. Because this is like sales stuff. This is classic sales stuff. Features, benefits, and all that kind of, like, your value proposition is going to be, who is my ideal client? What is the problem that they're facing, right?
Yep.
They're facing, what is the pain and the suffering or the desires that they hope to aspire to?
Yes.
And what are the benefits that this thing that I have that I haven't told you about yet, but what are these benefits that they're going to feel? It's going to be faster, cheaper, higher profit, greater revenue, higher quality, whatever that stuff is, right? Things that they emotionally are tied to. And if they go, yeah, that's what I want, then you explain.
Right.
Now let me explain to you what it is. The feature, right? This feature list that I got.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. We talk about this kind of stuff in sales all the time. What's interesting here is that you're kind of explaining mechanically what's going on in our minds when we're in this situation.
Yes. And if you take that perspective and you add it into your bag of tricks, I guarantee you it will increase your ability to close sales, because you'll be able to understand from how their physiology is working, from how their mind is working, what you need to get them to have them feel good to give you that yes at the end of the process.
Yeah, like there's this point in a sale. This is why you don't want to rush these things, where you want them to feel pissed and angry and uncomfortable. You want to take the time talking to them when you first meet them to get them into that state before you start coughing up your thing.
Right.
You need to get them in that mood, in that mode of like, yeah, this really is a problem. This is really something I need to solve.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And if you understand where they're coming from, like if you can get a good, decent, mental map of their self and their attachments that their mind has made, that's going to be an easier process for you to create. Like if you already know a little bit about what they care about, you're going to be able to make those associations that get them riled up and get them in that place to say, I need a resolution. And then you present the resolution.
Yep. There's a thing that's is so I think this is one of the biggest struggles I've always had in sales is the understanding that people really buy emotionally and they justify the purchase rationally. They don't do it the other way around.
Right.
And coming from an engineering background where everything you do is kind of rational, your whole day's kind of in the rational life because if something doesn't work, it doesn't work. There's not much you can do about it. You can't get angry. It's not going to make it fix. You got to say, I obviously done something wrong. I need to change this parameter or fiddle with this or something, right?
Right.
But the problem is, people see the world in a world of scarcity, and they don't see it in a world of abundance, and they're always in a state of fear or something like that. How can we conquer that? How can we conquer that as salespeople?
Well, to be able to conquer your own fear, it's a two-step process. One is to learn how your mind works and start to put into play the strategies that help get your mind under control, right? So that is utilizing the understanding of the two variables that come together to create every instance of fear in you. Like when you don't want to pick up the phone to make that first sales call into a new suspect or prospect or whatever it is, because you hate to hear that no. Everybody hates failure, everybody hates being rejected, etc. As a professional sales individual, you need to be able to get over that rather quickly. And one of the things that I learned early in my sales career was, man, I love getting to the no as quickly as possible because that allows me to get on to the next prospect. So I raced to the no.
Men.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, when I found a no, I was almost as happy as when I found a yes, because I knew that I no longer had to spend any more time with that individual. And so to be able to manage your own mind, you have to learn about your mind, which gets your mind under control for those two reasons. One, it gives you a little bit of distance between you and the observed reaction that you're having about your fear or trepidation or frustration or whatever it is. But then also, second, putting an understanding to that presses that little magic button in your mind that turns off your negative reaction, which allows you then to get your prefrontal cortex back. Because one of the first things that your emotional mind does when it starts freaking out is it turns off your thinking brain, and you lose 10 to 20 IQ points right off the top immediately within seconds sometimes based on an emotional reaction. It's called an amygdala hijack. And it shuts off your brain because basically, 150 years ago, that was a great idea that when you experienced fear, when you saw a bear walking out of the woods or something like that, the only energy you really needed was for your legs to run. You didn't need to think about things. But in today's world where we have spreadsheets and sales forecasts and funnels to manage and yada, 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 you got to think your way out of your problems a lot of times. And that's a bad reaction that we have to manage our brains out of now. And so when you push that button to turn off your negative reactions, you get your thinking brain back. Well, the second thing that happens over time is that plasticity occurs. Now, plasticity, just so everybody can understand, is the brain's ability to change in form and function. Like it used to be thought in neuroscience that we just got a brain and the brain never changed. We never got new neurons. It never realigned itself. And here's hoping you get a good one. It's your turn to roll the dice. Come on, 7, right? Now we know that's completely false. And just like when you go to the gym and you build your muscles up from working them out, and when you stop working out, you get smaller. Well, the brain works exactly the same way. When you work it in a certain area, such as practicing the piano or doing crossword puzzles or trying to learn how to shoot a basketball or whatever it is, your brain gets better over time based on how you're focusing and what you're doing with it. And so when you're talking about emotional regulation, when you're talking about keeping your prefrontal cortex turned on, when you're talking about being able to turn your bullshit down and be able to command the facilities of your mind more, the mind changes to help you do that more subconsciously and more automatic over time, and you get better at it. as the days go on. And so those are two things that you can do that'll allow yourself to become a better master of your own mind, to get your own, get yourself out of your way, so to speak. And then as you start to practice understanding the minds of your customers and even the minds of your sales management from time to time, this helps you in managing their expectations as well. You start managing those folks around you better, then that's going to get more automatic over time, and your subconscious mind going to help you do that as well.
In my mind, it's this whole idea of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that the more you do that, it's going to be easier for you to take on challenges and overcome them.
Oh, completely.
Yeah. I wonder if this is too academic for people. It's hard for me to know.
Well, I think, here's the thing. Something new is always going to be challenging. So I think a subset of your audience is going to say, holy cow, this is really awesome and really useful. And then a subset is going to be, that's too tough to think about. Because the other side of that is, the self, like the brain, just to give you a little bit of a backstage pass, the brain hates change. And especially it hates change with self and putting new ideas on, because, the self is 50% of your emotional responses, and it has to be accurate, else you could die if it's inaccurate. And so it hates making changes to the self, which is why people, attach themselves to certain politics. And no matter if they, say, well, we're going to cut the head off your baby. Okay, well, party before country or before whatever. That they stick with that stuff is because changing the self or changing the things that they're attached to.
I know. I see it myself, and I'm in the change business.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the time. Before we sign off, where would people go to find you online?
Well, you can find more information about the books and some videos and stuff that I've done at mindhackinghappiness.com. And then we've got links out to other things that we've been working on. I've been doing this podcast with these Navy SEALs now for a little while, and that's kind of been fun. So you can find some links out there. That's an adult podcast, by the way, and it's not sales oriented, but it might be just general interest stuff. And so you can find the books at Audible or Amazon, and they're getting pretty good reviews. So, you might want to check them out if you'd like.
Again, Sean, thanks a lot for visiting us here on Sales Babble.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
To quote Sean, he says, "Do you know your happiness is hackable? Did you know your mind is hackable? Did you know that you could hack the existing wiring in your brain to increase your happiness?" Maybe this conversation was too geeky, but I really enjoyed it. And if you want to learn more, you can find Sean and his links at www.salesbabble.com/296. One of the best ways people hear about Sales Babble is from our listener reviews. If you could go to your favorite podcast app and leave a 5-star comment, hey, I would really appreciate it, because word of mouth is how podcasts spread. And if you haven't subscribed to our podcast on one of those podcast apps, make sure and do that like right now, because you do not want to miss it. If you go to salesbabble.com, get on the email list. I'll send you an email once a week. No more. I am not a spammer. With all the show notes, so that you don't need to think about, what was that number Pat said? It'll be in your email every single Tuesday morning. Well, that's all I got for today, folks. Have a great Thanksgiving next Thursday. And for those of you not in the United States, you can celebrate anyway, too. Pilgrims and turkeys and all that stuff you've probably seen in the movies and TV. We do that upright. Until next week, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.